Freddie, you had some technical difficulties there. Want to throw you under the bus. Just saying.
Just make sure you turn off your notifications.
Okay, when you're recording.
No,
so we went through the 3 stomachs. We got Adam, my son Robbie, and Freddie here. Thanks, guys, again for being here. But we're going to go over the 3 stomachs and maybe more of the practical application of it. But just to have a refreshed idea of what your 3 stomachs are. So again, you have 3 stomachs. You're like an ostrich. I don't mean to say anything foul. Thank you. Okay, that's a dad joke. So you have a physical stomach, an emotional stomach, and a spiritual stomach, and that we discussed last week that it's our responsibility, right, gentlemen? We're all adults. We don't have mommy feeding us anymore. We all have to feed ourselves. We all have to understand what good nutrition is. Did any of you guys ever see Super Size Me? The guy who ate McDonald's for 30 days?
Yeah.
Oh, I heard about him.
Oh, I know about it.
Yeah, how did that work for him? Not too good, right?
Not too good.
So eating right makes sense. We hear that a lot, with physical food, but back to the other 2 stomachs that we are responsible for, how do you feed them yourself emotionally healthy? How do you feed yourself spiritually healthy? So you guys are going to get a chance maybe to share a little bit of your own experience. All you guys have recovered in your addictions. A lot of you have a fair amount of sobriety, myself included. So we're just going to talk about how we have learned to meet those hungers. You guys all agree that we metaphorically have 3 stomachs, correct?
Yes.
Now that you've been enlightened, I've enlightened you. I'm not saying I'm a guru or anything like that, but you guys agree that we have hunger that comes spiritually, emotionally, and physically. Fair enough?
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you. So with the nod, Robbie, that is you saying yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I want to do now is get into a little bit of the discussion of definitely how do we accomplish this. And one of the things I do understand, in talking with so many people about recovery and addiction, is that if you say no to your drug of choice, so whether it's a substance or a process addiction, you have to say yes to something else, right?
Yeah.
That's the only way to detach so you can attach. And addictions, they impact us 3-dimensionally. Anytime I've ever talked with anybody with an addiction, you have to make sure you look at all 3 parts of who they are as a human. Actually, it's in the New Testament. I think it's Thessalonians 3, I believe, it says that we are 3-dimensional as human, spirit, body, and soul. So when we heal, we have to consider all 3 parts of us. And so maybe we could just go around the room here, if you will, the virtual room, and maybe you guys can share what you found out when you began to realize you needed to recover. What did you notice emotionally and spiritually that you didn't notice when you were in your active addiction?
Well, I can start us off, Rob. When I first went to Recovery Village and was kind of thrown into that environment, I had nothing. I didn't know what to expect. I was scared. I was frightened. I was angry. I was resentful. I didn't really feel that I needed to be there. I still felt that I had it under control, that I didn't have an issue. But the more and more time I spent there and doing the work that was outlined for me, one, I had to become extremely vulnerable, and I've never been that vulnerable in my life to share, intimate things about my life and my experiences and my addiction that I've been hiding in line for a long time. And I was using, so to speak, a substance to cover that up and hide my insecurities, my the shame and guilt that came along with some of the things that I did, and I would just not want to revisit those. And so I would drown
Yeah.
myself into a substance and hopefully not relive those and not think about those and escape reality. And when you're put into a situation or an environment where that's taken from you, where you don't have access to that, it makes you become vulnerable, makes you sit in your emotions, sit with uncomfortable feelings. And
Mhm.
the only way that I grew was to understand that I needed to be filled with something else, and that was God. And for me personally, and in my experience, and I knew that I could no longer control my life. It became unmanageable.
Yeah.
And the only thing that I could think of and would to reach out to God and to ask for Him to guide me into the person that He intended me to be, the father, the husband, the person that I knew that I wanted to be, but I chose a different route leading up to that point. And I think, in my experience, the only thing that filled that void was God.
No, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you. Somebody
Yeah.
else?
Yeah. When I knew had to recover again, yeah, I was like, man, it's gonna be hard to let my addiction go again. It's now I gotta find something else, and that's when I went, with physically, I started eating more sweets, and then emotionally, I just start at first I was being shameful, shameful that I had to go get the help again.
Yeah.
But somehow I knew I had to, and then spiritually, I had to get back and start praying, start, asking Jesus for help because I couldn't do it alone. So it was hard. It was hard just to drop my addiction. And then when I was in those rooms in rehab, it was just teaching me, how to focus more on other stuff when you're fighting your addiction,
Right.
spiritually, emotionally, because it was very. I felt shame. Shame was like the biggest one there when I was there because
Yeah.
I relapsed again. It's my second time going to
Right.
rehab, so I felt like, damn, I have to go again.
Yeah.
But now I was grateful, actually that I did went this time because spiritually I became stronger, and that's what's helping me right now with my addiction and with my emotions. Is the spiritual part is the one that's heavy on my back right now.
Awesome.
I know when I probably had been debating it for at least 3 months, whether or not getting help when I was in my addiction, like the last 3 months of my addiction. And I thought I could just fake it because I went through a Christian rehab. So I was like, all right, it's cool. I don't actually need God. I don't need Jesus or anything like that. All I got to do is just get clean and I can just fake it the whole time. But God had a different idea, and definitely, it's actually funny. I made a deal with God that's usually you usually don't come out on top on that one. It's actually kind of a funny story, but I won't go into it. It's kind of long, but I made a deal with God, and I said, if you get me out of this, then I'll follow you for the rest of my days. And he's like, okay.
Yeah.
And so,
Sucker.
yeah, exactly. I surrendered. I think that was probably like 2 months into rehab, and that was pretty funny. But I was at wit's end because it was either I was going to get caught. It was inevitable. I was going to get caught, catch a felony charge, or I was going to die in my addiction, or I was going to die. Those were my only three options I saw in my reality. And then when I found out about the rehab facility that I went through, it was kind of like, oh, I guess there is a glimmer of hope. But it definitely was a battle, and I'm thankful for the rudiments that were placed because they're kind of like, they were like rungs in a ladder to help climb out of that pit of despair that I, dug myself. And, it all first started with accepting that I had a problem, but also realizing where that problem could be fixed was with God first. And then he would begin the work of doing inside to help me bring me out of that ladder.
Yeah. No, that's good. Yeah, that brings back a lot of memories for me, boy. But I had my own experience where I remember kind of making these deals with God, but it was very similar to yours. So like father, like son.
I guess.
But it's interesting because what you guys are saying is pretty normal. I hear a lot of people in recovery say the same thing, and what I do appreciate about what you guys are saying is that when we have an addiction, it's pretty well attached to us, and what we've done is we've used it. We call it a coping mechanism. We call it a way for us to medicate or to numb out. And what are you trying to distance yourself from? Typically it's shame, guilt, pain, feelings of inadequacy, the lack of acceptance, and so you use your drug of choice as a way to kind of create a fake world, a fake connection. And so when we talk about the three stomachs, what we're talking about is, how do I move forward now that I know that I have these three appetites to satisfy, and being human, unfortunately, there's no way to get rid of these appetites. These appetites are part of the human existence. So one of my favorite scriptures to illustrate this is Proverbs 27:7. It says, "A full man loathes honey, but to the hungry the bitter is sweet." A full man loathes honey, but to the hungry the bitter is sweet. Does somebody want to tell me what they think that means? Crickets. Alert.
I thought
Well, it's funny because we all pause, and then it's like, then we were all like, oh, okay, no one's going to go, and then we all talk at the same time. But the first part, obviously, a full man loves honey, doesn't need to eat anything at that point in time, and he's full, so henceforth, he doesn't need to eat.
Right.
But to the hungry man, anything at that point in time, when you think about the last episode, when you spoke about the special forces guy being out for 6 days, he probably could have eaten, a dirt clod with a little bit of chocolate, in there, or a garbage can full of half-eaten Subway sandwiches and been more than happy, and it would have satisfied him. And that would have probably, old Subway sandwiches in a trash can would have a little bit of mold on there, but I wouldn't even pick it off at that point.
Yeah, it's crazy, back to the driving force of hunger. And, it's amazing to me with all the people that I've had a chance to work with. I like to say this, that your addiction is not an intellectual issue, because how many of us would actually stick our hand on a hot surface twice? It's typically one time, we learn, hey, that burns, right? But when you think of addiction, you don't go through your intellectual faculties. It's something else that's driving it, right? Because how many times would you say that you used your drug of choice, you realized, this, like Robbie, you said, this thing could kill me, but I don't care, right? There comes a point where we just kind of get to a place where we just don't care. And so with that being said, I think the key when moving forward with the three stomachs metaphor is to be real clear about how do I need to feed myself so I can continue to say no to what I've learned about my addiction historically, that our addictions have been a counterfeit. They've been McDonald's, if you will. It's been fast food. It's been partially nutritious, maybe not at all. If you even talk to somebody who is actually struggled with like an eating addiction, a lot of times you'll hear them say, well, I ate emotionally. I ate to deal with my emotions. So as we just kind of get to the point of the practical application here with the three stomach metaphor, is how do you end up feeding those other two stomachs in a healthy way? I mean, obviously, I think even in addiction recovery, we always should look at our physical food, how we eat, right? Because how we eat physical food can impact our emotions and our spiritual health, right?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, it's just yeah, we said it right there. You know, it's for me. I gotta tackle down eating sweets now. You know, and then always just praying and praying because I would always use my addiction. You know, just to hide everything that I was going
Right.
through. It was my go-to for everything. You know, but now it's just praying and eating different. A lot of sweets is what I'm addicted to now.
So like harm reduction, which is the idea that we reduce the types of addictions that we have, from the worst to the least, so you may be in the process of harm reduction, but still I agree, we have to really consider, if I continue to eat like this, am I going to create more problems in my life? If we do like the Super Size Me guy, I mean, he ended up having tons of medical issues after 30 days, eating McDonald's 100%. And by the way, I'll just be honest, I'll occasionally eat McDonald's, but if I eat it breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and all my snacks from there, it's not going to end well for me.
Even once
like
you're gonna pay for it.
What's that?
Even once you're gonna pay for it.
Yeah, but anyways, we're not going to go there, Mister. But so guys, how have you guys learned in your recovery and maintaining sobriety? What do you guys do to feed those other two stomachs? What has worked for you? So let's just start with the emotional. And by the way, I think we all would probably agree that many times emotional nutrition can be also spiritual nutrition. But for this discussion, what are some of the ways that you guys specifically try to meet your emotional needs and fill that emotional stomach?
Well, first, go ahead, Robbie.
I told you and I, Adam, all the time. It's so funny.
You need a buzzer, man.
I know, right?
Seriously. For me, actually, it's funny because I'm such a slow processor on a lot of stuff. I don't realize actually that something's even bothering me for days on end. And for me, it's
That's my fault.
yeah, I know. Yeah, thanks. For me, it's actually doing the dishes. So what I do is nightly, I do the dishes in my house, and first off, I love doing dishes by hand, but also it's cheaper than a therapist. Sorry, Dad. But,
Well, I couldn't charge you, so.
Yeah. But it's nice because I can just focus on a single task of washing the dishes, and it basically almost like shower thoughts. My conscious is moving things to subconscious, and my brain is actually going through a lot of different stuff, and it allows me to process. So it's actually, if I'm almost kind of grumpy and I lash out at my wife, and I can come to bed and say, oh, I figured out why I was so mad, and it was because I'd stopped thinking about it and I had emotionally lashed out on something that actually had nothing to do with the reality of the situation. It was something that happened a few days before. And I think that's really good emotional therapy for me, because I'm able to find out what the issue was by just a simple task and shutting my brain off.
Well, that's good. So would you call it Dove therapy or?
No, I don't like Dove.
Palmolive?
Yeah, okay, that's all right.
Yeah. What are you going to say, Adam?
I'm just going to kind of piggyback off of what Robbie said. I mean, the first step for me with regards to my emotional stomach is just becoming emotionally aware. I've spent a good part of my life suppressing these emotions and not dealing with them head on, and to actually sit in those emotions and be vulnerable and be willing to connect with somebody and share those emotions. I think for me personally is the only way that I can fully grasp what they're doing to me personally. And then if it's affecting somebody, which usually it is, being married, it affects my wife if I'm in a bad mood because I'm dwelling on something, and just being open and honest with her or anybody else, I think it shows me that, one, you can't just keep suppressing your emotions, and you have to deal with these in a healthy way. And help for the start of that for me is just being aware of how I'm feeling, what am I triggered by, or what internalizing, what story am I playing in my head that might not be true, in any situation. So I think the first thing, to fill that void or that emptiness in your emotional stomach is to be aware of what you're feeling, and understanding why you're feeling that way, or who made you feel that way, and having those open communication lines available to whoever you're dealing with, I think is ultimately going to help you benefit in the long run.
Yeah, no, that's good. Freddie?
Yeah, for me was to be vulnerable. Talking about it. Keeping in touch with people, talking to my wife, and just being very open about it. That's helped me, because my biggest issue was always holding it all in, and carrying it in my back because
Mhm.
of my pride. I had very strong pride,
Yeah.
so I had to be that tough guy. So had to be very open, and then just walks at the park, walk my dog, and get some fresh air, and look at the scenery, and be
Yeah.
grateful for the
Yeah.
situation where I'm at, because I could be worse. I could be in the streets. I could be poor. So I kind of look at all the other bad situations out there, and kind of focus on the life that I'm living right now, to kind of give me a stronger emotional, process, instead of being negative.
Well, I mean, guys, I think all of you did a great job in just talking about how, we need to be open, we need to be honest, we need to be vulnerable, have an emotional insight. And, I always like to say I've never been able, when I was a cop, to talk sense into an intoxicated person, and that's part of the problem when you're intoxicated with an addiction, your drug of choice, and it could be sex addiction, it could be gambling, it could be alcoholism, drug addiction, whatever. If you're intoxicated, how aware are you of your emotions? You tend to be trying to create distance from your emotions or numb them, whatever you're trying to do. So, I mean, those are great points, guys. Is that one of the first things we have to do to really begin to feed our emotional stomachs is be aware that we have emotional hunger, and we need to also be aware, Robbie, what you're talking about is, to be aware of what if I'm having some toxic emotions. Um, we're going to go into this in a later podcast more specifically, but what I do like to say is, you really need to spend 24 to 72 hours on your emotions. They're like fruits and vegetables. You want to serve them up fresh. If you stuff them, they go into a drawer and they mold, right? So, the key to dealing with emotions is to do it when they're fresh. I could just even say in my relationship with my wife, Danielle, it ends up when I would stuff my emotions, man, they would come up somewhere else, and they would be like whack-a-mole. I would never know where they come up, and so I had to, and she's really good with emotions, and I wasn't, and I had to learn how to do just what you're talking about, Robbie, and just get to a place where I could go, this is what I'm feeling. And a lot of times I wouldn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me at first. But when you're an addict, you don't even know why you're an addict typically, right?
Yeah.
When you're just trying to solve something, and many times it's very subconscious. So great comments, guys. So if I can just derive from what you guys said, learning emotional insights. So there's going to be some work where you're going to have to probably gain some emotional vocabulary words, right? So meaning a lot of times what I'll say is learning how to emotionally heal, you've got to become an emotional archaeologist like Indiana Jones. You know, you got to deal for these emotional artifacts. And so, you know, if you're going to do that, you got to be prepared to do some digging. And then you've got to kind of figure out, okay, how did this impact me? If I want to understand my story and allow myself to forgive myself, I may need to understand, you know, the pathology, the explanation of how I got here. And then, you know, if you have a significant other, then it's about how do I end up communicating what's going on in my heart. So that's what I heard you guys saying is that's a big part of becoming emotionally healthy, is having those horizontal relationships, right? With either recovery people, friends, and then primarily your spouse, right?
Yep.
Okay, that is a yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That
How
is,
about
yeah.
how about spiritual, feeding yourself spiritually? How have you guys learned how to do that?
For me, it's a constant. I gotta constantly go to church on Sundays and pray every day. You know, there's a prayer that I say all the time, and then so I just kind of constantly have to keep a schedule, because
Okay.
if I don't keep it a schedule, you know, that then it starts kind of fading away. But it's always there. But
Right.
to still maintain it for myself, I
Yeah.
just got to have a schedule with my higher power as well.
Right. Okay. Good.
For me personally, it's just kind of turning into God, and kind of letting go of the wheel. I think there's a saying kind of going around in some of my other groups that I attend weekly, saying that cheerfully capitalizing on God's omnipotence, and basically just meaning giving up control, and accepting that you're not in control, and you try to dictate certain things throughout the week, whether it be stress, anxiety, and this obviously this day and age we're dealing with something that's out of everyone's control, and it's, you know,
Right.
the things aren't normal from a
Right.
work-life balance. You know, it's all turned upside down, and you know, we don't have any control of that. And and the only thing you can do is just keep your faith, you know, stick to what works, and that what works is meditation and prayer, and turning into God and turning into your life, and being grateful for the things that, you know, things are different, but they're better than, you know, an alternative from different parts of the world, and be grateful in the blessings that you have, and just continue to turn into God and lead into him, and continue to give him thanks for the blessings that you have. And that's my experience. That's kind of how I've been able to kind of fill that spiritual, that stomach, that hunger, by having that connection and that relationship with God and higher power, on a daily basis. And you know, we all slip up, we all slip unintentionally or intentionally, but the bottom line is that, you know, if you kind of give up control and you kind of lean into God's word and into your faith, you know, that's a step in the right direction to fill that spiritual hunger.
Yeah. Good. Robbie?
For me, it definitely started along the same lines with Freddie, like where it's more of a habit. So every day, the first thing I do when I wake up is I read my Bible. I usually do, not to sound all spiritual, but I read through the Bible every year, and not in like this rushed, matter-of-fact way. I like it. I like being able, because I always catch something new. This year I'm doing it chronologically, which is really fun. And if you haven't read the Bible chronologically, it's really, really cool just to see how everything kind of plays out.
Yeah.
And it's really cool. I really have enjoyed the chronological version. But then being in worship ministry at my church, it's my favorite place is worshiping my God, Jesus. And I think for me, I recognize that the more I began to worship Jesus from the platform, the more I got out of the way. My pride stepped out of the way. I remember you said something about that, Freddie, too, about your pride. And like, I'm like, dude, I'm a man. I'm very prideful. And the more I step out of the way, the more God can move through me and affect others, which is our ultimate goal. And to be in that relationship with God, it's a daily thing like you would have with your friends, you know, and every day thanking God for everything, but also just allowing him to be in every moment. But I think worshiping God daily, and it's not just worship, I think is diluted in the mainstream because everyone just thinks it's music, but it's everything we do, our lifestyle, our lives should be worship, bringing glory to God. So it's like, what have I done today to bring glory to God? And I think once I began to really practice that, it changed how I worshiped and my spiritual relationship.
Yeah, no, it's good. You know, and the cool thing is about the feeding those two stomachs is they can be as different as personalities, right? So, you know, there are certain principles that I think you guys touched on that are consistent, but you know, everybody's a little different. So Robbie, for you and me, you know, worship, singing, music, that's kind of a vehicle for us, but you're right. Worship is focus. It's what we focus on. And, you know, but when you talk about, okay, how do I feed myself spiritually? Some people do well with the disciplines. Some people do better or change in with, you know, more of the relational type of thing. I'm more of a relational type of guy where, you know, I tend to do better if it's not scripted. But because of hopefully maybe some of the viewers who are going to be watching this will want to go, well, hey, I haven't had the experience you guys have had. I don't have much of a spiritual training or discipline. So what do I need to do? Because I feel like this, if I'm going to practically apply this, I really want to help people know how to feed at least their two stomachs. Go to your nutritionist. Look at healthy organic food for the physical. But normally, I've never seen too many skinny first world country people. So I think we all know how to physically eat, I hope. But here's how you emotionally begin the process of feeding yourself and spiritually beginning the process to feeding yourself. And it's through what I call the 6 commitments. Number 1 would be to have AM prayer or meditation. And again, if you're just beginning your spiritual journey and you don't even feel like you know what it means to have a relationship with God, then, you know, the most simple way to do this is just ask God if he's real to reveal himself. And the, you know, as a Christian, I also believe in the scripture that says, if I believe in my heart that God is, you know, if I believe that he is God, and I believe that Jesus Christ rose from the dead, and I believe on him, I will be saved. It's simple. It's not really a complex thing. So all you have to do is move towards God, ask him to show himself to you, and he will. And many times that's just by starting basically with being open to praying and meditating on a higher power. Start that journey. And then number 2 would be daily reading. Because this is a recovery video, I don't want to just only touch on the spiritual. I want to touch on, okay, you may need to understand why you struggled with being emotionally authentic and vulnerable and healthy. So you may not only have to learn how to feed yourself emotionally, you may have to find out why you can't open your mouth emotionally, if you will. So you may need to do some healing that way too. So recovery material will be key. And I would start basic, start with basic recovery steps, 12 steps. There's so many things out there. But you need to daily read. If you don't read daily, you won't be able to load the bullets in the gun that will kill your addiction. The bullets in the gun come from knowledge and being able to have that information to fight the addictive thinking. It's the antivirus to the virus, the addiction. It's the way we reprogram from the addictive programming. So reading does that. Reading will do that. Spiritually, as far as reading the Bible or devotional, I also believe that God's word, the Bible, it's active and powerful, and it creates it. It changes us. So you can read that, and it will begin to change you actually by reading it. So read. So again, number 1 is AM prayer or meditation. Number 2 is daily reading. Number 3 is attending groups. You got to fellowship. You got to find other people who are in recovery. That's why I kind of like what we did today, guys, is we're given a picture of what recovery looks like. It's not just about me. It's not just about you. It's about us, right? And so we find strength in telling our stories. We find commonalities. We find acceptance. And by the way, to step out of shame, you've got to begin to find acceptance. And that's one thing that, by the way, spiritually, that God does for us. He accepts us just where we're at. We don't have to clean up or anything. He takes us as we are. But that's the beauty of recovery too, is when you get into recovery, we take each other as we are, so group is going to be really critical for that. And try to do that at least one time a week. I usually suggest, some kind of group meeting 2 to 3 times a week, so you have something every other day. That way you don't be like the good religious people and attend church on Sunday and live like hell the next 6. I mean, we're just human. So, try to go to group at least 2 to 3 times a week. And there's so many different ways, even with the COVID-19 thing where we're doing the social distancing, like we're doing here, you can Zoom it. You can talk on the phone. You can hang out, So number 3 would be weekly meetings. Number 4 would be daily contact to somebody else in recovery. And that's just a check-in. I'm doing good today. I'm sober, or I'm struggling today. Because here's what I know is, if you don't make the habit to make those calls when the stuff hits the fan, it will, you probably won't make the call or the contact. Make sure it's a phone call at least. Better when we're out of this crazy COVID-19 thing, face to face. So number 4 would be daily contact to somebody else in recovery. Number 5 is PM prayer or meditation, just being grateful for your day, thanking God for your day. And number 6 is begin to create a gratitudes list. Freddie, you touched on it. What we do know about the human brain and the joy center of the brain, that gratitude and thankfulness actually causes that part of our brain to thrive, and it releases healthy chemicals in our brain, and it causes us to actually get out of depression. And most addiction has some depressive issues to it, so one of the best way to non-pharmaceutically treat depression is to become grateful. So there you go. So I'll go over them again. So number 1 is AM prayer meditation. Number 2 is daily reading. Number 3 is weekly groups, 2 to 3 a week. Number 4 is daily contact with somebody else in recovery. Number 5 is PM prayer or meditation. And number 6 is a list of gratitudes. All right, guys, we're about out of time, but you guys have been awesome. I want to give you a chance to just share one last thing about the 3 stomachs and anything we talked about, and we'll go alphabetically. So go Adam, Freddie, Robbie, if I know my ABCs.
Nice, we figured that out at the end here.
Well, dude, that's all that education.
Well, I just want to say thank you for allowing us to be a part of this unique experience. I know if I had something like this back when I was struggling, it would have given me a little bit more hope than I had. So I want to thank you for allowing this platform for us to kind of, feel connected with one another in this time. It's, pretty scary out there for some. So thank you, Rob.
You're welcome.
I just want to say, understanding the three stomachs, I mean, you only thought about, prior to this conversation or last week's podcast was kind of, all I knew was there was just one, the hunger felt by the physical stomach, and understanding, post addiction in my recovery, the physical and spiritual are just as important, if not more important, than the physical stomach in my experience, and filling those empty voids each and every day is critical to my recovery and my sobriety and my overall way of life. So understanding those and being vulnerable and living with those emotions and being honest with yourself, I think has helped me tremendously in my recovery. So I want to thank you for, hammering those home.
You're welcome, buddy. I'll send you the bill.
All right.
All right, for me, I just want to say thank you guys, and then for having me in your guys' groups, and then I'm grateful to be part of this. All this is, of course, different now that we're doing this with Zoom. Very appreciated. Adam, Robbie and Robert. I'm grateful right now. God actually feels pretty good, man, to be part of this. And then, cool. Knowing these three stomachs, man, is I just knew about one, So now, it's pretty interesting, and for me, the one that I choose the most right now is the spiritual, because that's what's, helping me physically, and emotionally. It is going to be my spiritual side of things. That's what's keeping me right now, staying sober and strong and focused through all this that's going on. So knowing all that, I'm gonna keep the spiritual side of it stronger, because I see that more powerful than the other two.
Awesome.
Well, I guess we're all starting with thank you. So thanks, Pops, for giving me life.
Okay.
But also thanks for bringing us all together. This has been cool. I like the process of understanding a problem and how to apply to find the solution, and having the understanding of what three stomachs looks like, because we all know what our physical stomach, we probably have an idea what it looks like, but we know how it applies in our life. So I like the fact of understanding an emotional stomach and a spiritual stomach, because we all know how to feed ourselves in the physical format. And now it's like, well, we know what good food looks like and we know what bad food looks like. So how, in the emotional standpoint and the spiritual standpoint, are we going to feed ourselves with good emotional food or spiritual food, or bad emotional food and bad spiritual food? So these are really helpful, not only for myself to bring understanding to it, but also I think it'll benefit others too. So it's been pretty cool. I like it. And then also just hearing other guys' stories too, that we're all kind of along the same line. We also understand things differently, and we have different perspectives, and it kind of brings light to different areas. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, this has been awesome, guys, and thank you so much. And for you guys out in recovery land, we hope that this has been valuable to you. Please, if you need resources or any help, please contact me at ftlcounselingco@gmail.com, or you can reach me at my office, 719-593-1163. And you can leave a message, and I'll do whatever I can to assist you in finding some help. If you do like this podcast, please subscribe, like, or any comments. Definitely want to hear from you. I may keep the band together here if these guys don't act up anymore, and we could have some other times where we create another podcast. But hey, appreciate you guys. Best to you. Let us know how we can help. Good night.